But remember, they weren't cheating. Not
No.
according to him.
No, you forced him and her into
Yeah.
a relationship because of your crazy ideas of them cheating. It pushed them together.
Yep. And then he was so hurt by me leaving that they just built this amazing relationship where she moved in with him in less than 30 days. Whatever.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 285 of the Nacho Kids podcast. Just a friendly reminder, we will be in the Scottsdale, Arizona area, December the 7th at 6 o'clock, doing a little meet and greet with David and myself. If you are interested in participating, please email me at Lori@nachokids.com. That's Lori @nachokids.com, or contact us at nachokids.com. Either way, just let us know so we can make reservations. All right. We know that the holidays are coming up and it can be a very hard time for everybody, especially step families. If you are struggling in your blend or just want to better your blend, join the Nacho Kids Academy today so we can help you. All right. Our guest today is Stepmom Becky. This is her second blend, y'all. Second. Yep. I do need to say that there is mention of suicide in this episode, just as a disclaimer. And with that being said, that's all I'm going to tell you. So let's get to listening. Today we have Stepmom Becky from North Carolina. Hey, Becky, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Lori?
Doing well. Tell us a little bit about your blend. This isn't your first blend.
So it's not. So I have had a long relationship journey, I would say. So I have two bio kids, 18 and 23. Their dad and I were married for about 11 years. After we split up, I was single for about 4 or 5 years, met somebody, was in a long-term relationship with him, and we ended up getting married after we'd been together for 5 years. And he had 2 kids, but I had known them like the whole time. So I met them originally and they were like 4 and 6. So by the time we got married, they were 9 and 11, I guess. So, but they pretty much never remembered life without me as part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that blend, and that's a whole different relationship story that ended very not good. And then my current partner, he and I have been together for 3 years. We've been engaged for about a year, and we moved in together about 4 months ago. So depending on when you define the start of the blend, the kids have known me for a few years, but we really have just all been under one roof for about 4 months now.
Okay. We got a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Are you okay talking about the first relationship?
Yeah, I'm talking about any of them.
Okay. So you and your husband split up, and your kids were, how old do you think?
They were really young when their dad and I, when we split up. My daughter was 3 and my son was 8. And we split up right on the heels of my dad passed away. Very suddenly. He passed away from suicide. So it really, just rocked my world. And I realized how long I had been unhappy and just kind of accepting that that's what my life was. Which makes me really sad now to think about that I was in that point. And their dad is not a bad guy. We were just super young when we got married. We were very different. We grew way apart. We were good parents together. We have always been great co-parents together, thankfully. But, my dad dying just pulled the rug out from under me. And I just basically upended my whole life because I felt like being happy and mentally healthy was really important for my kids to see in me. And so we split up, and in the very beginning, we did like that 2-2-5-5 schedule, which was terrible.
Yes. Just
so much back and forth for the kids. And I mean, we only did it for maybe like 3 months. And then even though we weren't at that point on like great conversational terms, we could talk about the kids and be okay. And we both were like, this is just not good for us. It's not good for the kids. And we switched to like 50-50. So week on, week off. And we have been that way ever since.
Okay. When you met your next husband, your first blended relationship.
Yeah.
And the stepkids were 9 and 11?
They were 9 and 11 when we got married and moved in together. I met them and they were young. They were like 4 and 6.
Okay. And how old were your kids at the time?
So my daughter was 6 and my son, so he's 5 years older. So he's like 11.
Okay. So fairly young,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got two the same age.
Yep.
How often did you get the stepkids in that relationship?
So with him, and I would call him the ex because it's
Okay.
just, I've like the baby dad, even though we were married, it just makes it clear for people.
Yep.
So my ex, my second husband, he had every other weekend, and then he was supposed to take him to dinner on Wednesday nights. So that's kind of that real old school custody arrangement. In the early days of he and I dating, like I was around his kids. They literally went on our first date with us, which is crazy to me now.
Really?
Yeah, we went to a park and just had all the kids, and we acted like it was no big deal, which, whatever. I don't, looking back, that should have been a giant red flag, but we all look through things with rose-colored glasses. But
Live and learn.
yeah, exactly. And I also looked at him as like, oh, he's really trying to be a good dad, but he's just a fool. He's a man. He doesn't know what he's doing, and his daughter's a mess, and he's struggling, and I'm just gonna rush in and save the day. And he was happy for me even from the very beginning, because before we ever got married and lived together, he was happy for me to run the show, so to speak, as the parent. Like I was buying his kids clothes, and we were together pretty much every time he had them. And, I just moved right into that mom role. And thankfully, his kids were really good kids. All of our kids got along. It was easy. I loved it. I loved having all these kids, having another daughter, having another son. Like, it just was like what people probably imagine blending families is supposed to be like. Like, it's supposed to be easy. And all I was missing from the Brady Bunch was Alice. I didn't have an Alice.
Right. Which I'm determined Alice is the reason that the Brady Bunch was happy.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But, he was just and looking back, he was such a hands-off dad that it was easy for him to just let me be the mom in the situation, and he didn't have to worry about anything, and the kids were taken care of. And, at the time he told me his ex-wife was high conflict, is what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
And so she and I never had any interactions. Even after we got married and were living together, it was bare minimum. Like, I would send her pictures of the kids doing stuff occasionally just to be nice. And she was always like, thanks. But we were never like in the same environment or trying to talk or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he and I had been married for about a year, he decided he wanted to try to get more custody of his kids. And I supported him. And what was happening was his ex-wife was getting ready to get married, and she was going to move about an hour away from where we lived. And he didn't want her to move. So we did the whole court case and everything. And in the court case, she came prepared. And I should say the kid's dad and I, we had never been to court. We worked all of our divorce arrangements out, our parenting arrangements. We did all of that ourselves, had a court file it to do the right thing and be legal. But like, we had never had to interact with lawyers or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So it was a really eye-opening experience for me. So we go to court, and in the court case, she came in, his ex-wife came in and like just pulled out hundreds of pages of the ugliest text messages you could ever imagine, things he had been saying to her for years. Everything from wishing terrible things upon her to insulting every aspect of her being. She had recorded phone calls that he had called her where he had like threatened all kinds of scary stuff, calling her names, just the most foul things ever. And I was shocked. I knew they didn't get along well, but I had never heard him speak like that to her. I had never like snooped in his phone or anything,
right,
and like seen those messages. I was shocked. And our whole family was in the courtroom as she's like reading this out loud, because her attorney made her read a lot of it out loud, and it was awful.
Oh gosh.
And he had never been that way to me. I had never seen anything that made me think there was this whole, was it Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll kind of personality to him. So the court case goes on, and I think I take credit for the fact that he did get some extra custody, and I think it's because of the influence I had had on the kids' lives.
Yeah.
And even his ex-wife said, once I had come in the picture and we were living together, things had gotten, they were not as abusive, like verbally abusive and stuff. It had slowed down a little bit. So we ended that court case with He still had every other weekend, and then we got him 50% of the time in the summer. So they were allowed to move with their mom. But we got him in the summer. So it wasn't what he wanted, but I still considered it a win for us.
Was he wanting full time? Because really, if she's moving an hour away, there's not many other options.
No, I think honestly, in retrospect, looking back, I think his whole goal was to stop her from moving.
Yeah.
I don't know that I really believe he actually wanted those kids 50% of the time. I think it was like just to disrupt her life and just get under her skin and stop her from being happy.
Yeah, it was more about her than the kids.
Yeah. So long story short, like after that court case, we moved forward, but he changed. His cover was blown, is what I like to think of it at now.
Yeah.
He was embarrassed. I consider him a narcissist, a textbook narcissist. I know a lot of people throw that term around, but his cover had been blown in front of his family, in front of my family, in front of our friends who were all in court to support us. I knew what he was really like now. And so things for us on a personal relationship got really bad really fast. He actually started cheating. He had a girlfriend that he brought around and made part of our social circle, which that's a whole nother podcast we could talk about.
Oh, let me write that down. Another podcast. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I held on for a good while, about another year, a little more than a year and a half in the relationship because I love the kids. I thought, he was doing his best gaslighting job. I thought it was on me. I thought I was being crazy. And because I didn't like this woman and her husband, they both became part of our social circle.
Oh, whoa. So he was cheating with a married woman?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure.
And, it just we started having all these fights. I mean, it just was like day and night, and it all like just turned on a dime from having a pretty good relationship, not saying there weren't lots of red flags I should have paid attention to, but to having this awful, terrible, like he would yell at me all the time. Like I would dread going home. And it wasn't even about the kids. It was about him.
Yeah.
And then I felt so protective of the kids. Then, when I got to the point where he actually physically got busted by some friends of us cheating, who then told me. So then my suspicions were all confirmed. Then it was only like 2 or 3 months before we actually really split. I moved out of the house. But like those few months, like there was so much grief in there because I knew the way he was that he was not going to let me have a relationship with his kids.
Yeah.
And, that was a really hard thing to let his kids go because, we had blended so well. His kids hugged me. They were telling me they loved me. It was like they were my children. And I knew down into my core, he was not going to encourage that relationship to continue.
Right. So once you found out he was cheating and had your proof, we'll say, that's when you decided to leave?
Yeah, we had been, for several months, we were back and forth. And I kept telling him, if he didn't want to be with me, just say it. And we could.
Oh, no, I want to be with you, Becky.
Well, no, he wouldn't even say that, which makes me sound like the saddest person in the world. But he would just get mad and like walk away. And I just kept saying, like, if this relationship is not going to work, it doesn't have to be ugly. We can end this relationship relatively peacefully and not keep being he never actually laid a hand on me, but I use the term punching bag, the mental punching bag for him. And he just wouldn't do it. He didn't want to be the bad guy. He wanted me. He wanted to drive me away. He wanted me to be the one to do it. And to this day, even though he cheated, he got caught. There was video proof. There was photo proof. There was text proof. He fully got caught. But to this day, he still tells people it's all my fault that we split up.
Of course.
I abandoned his family. And I'm like, yeah, that's not how it works, dude.
Okay, I'm going to say something that may not be appropriate. I may edit it out later. But there's a song by Nelly, and It Wasn't Me.
Yes.
Do you know that song?
Yeah.
Well, let's just say that song was popular when my ex and I were together. So that was my theme song for him. Because, like you said, it didn't matter. The proof you had wasn't him.
Yeah, wasn't him.
You're crazy.
Yep. Yeah. So, like I said, it was a few months, and it was more like once I had the video and photo proof of him cheating and stuff, it got easier. Like he suddenly was a little more willing to compromise, like on what to do with our house and stuff like that. And he's just pretty much started staying at his girlfriend's house for the most part, because by then she and her husband had split up. And, he just kind of disappeared for the most part until he bought me out of the house that we owned together. And so then I moved out. But it was hard. I mean, telling his kids, especially, like my kids honestly didn't have much of a relationship with him. He didn't put a lot of effort into building any sort of relationship with them. He was nice enough to them, but he wasn't like trying to be a stepdad, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a big deal to them, other than for my daughter, especially like losing her stepsister.
Yeah.
But his kids were really upset. And the interesting thing is, like somewhere in those last few weeks, his ex-wife reached out to me and was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm here if you need to talk. And I was like, let me move out and I'm going to tell you everything that's going on.
Yeah. Like, girl, you want to meet for coffee? Well, you know what? We might need a girls' weekend.
Yep. And so we did. Like and we've had virtually no relationship at all before that. And we met and we had lunch and I told her everything. And she was shocked. And she said, this sounds so much like exactly what he did to me.
But you never knew that. It was all her, the reason they split up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She was a cold wife. She didn't take care of him. She drove him away, blah, 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 And I mean, verbatim, some of the things he said to me, some of the ways he was cheating, like it was clearly a pattern in his life. And he just repeated it with me. And she said, she told me she would do whatever I wanted to support, like having a relationship with the kids, which made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But the other thing that happened right on the heels of that is like less than a month after I moved out of the house that I owned with him, he moved his girlfriend in. Yeah. But remember, they weren't cheating. Not into him.
No, you forced him and her into a relationship because of your crazy ideas of them cheating. It pushed them together.
Yep. And then he was so hurt by me leaving that they just built this amazing relationship where she moved in with him in less than 30 days, whatever.
Yeah.
But the big thing about that for me was, and I have done a lot of therapy over the years, like with the way my dad died. And then, going through all of that terrible, like 18 months with him, I was in therapy for a lot of it because I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
I knew for those kids to have her living in the house with them, I had to step back even further and let those kids take the lead on the relationship because they were still young and they were going to have to live with her as their new stepmom one day. And I didn't want them to feel confused and conflicted and like, I'm really sad that, Becky and my dad split up and now there's this other woman. I wanted those kids to be happy. And I knew they had to learn how to be happy in the environment they were forced into because of their dad.
That's very impressive of you.
It was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever had to just accept, but I knew they already had such a huge strike against them with having him as a dad that I didn't want to create any more emotional chaos in their life for them.
Now, put into perspective for me, if you don't mind,
Mm-hmm.
when you moved out, or when you had proof of cheating, when you moved out and when your dad died.
So my dad died when I was married to my first husband, to the kid's dad.
That's why when you got divorced. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Then.
No, that's fine. Okay. So that was probably like 7 or 8 years prior to the whole cheating thing with my second husband.
Okay.
I found out for sure that he was cheating, like got visual proof, because somebody saw him and told me about it. That was around the end of July. I confronted him pretty immediately about it. And there were a few weeks where he was doing the begging, crying, sobbing, give me another chance kind of deal. Then he got real angry again and went back to this is all your fault and you caused all of it. And then I moved out in the very beginning of November. So it was like August, September, October, November.
I'm impressed you stayed that long.
There were a lot of aspects to it. Part of it was with the kids, he disappeared for, weeks at a time. So then I was just in the house by myself and he would just like text me and like fight with me through that way. So that was a piece of it. The other piece of it, quite frankly, was we had never combined finances. and I made more money than he did. And I had a bunch of money in savings. And so then I was like, I was trying to be really smart about how we broke up, meaning that I wanted to protect my money because that money was like money I'd been saving for my kids' college and stuff. And I didn't want him to be able to get it or ask for it or any of that. So there was like it was incredibly painful mentally to be there during that time. But it was like I was playing the long game to try to get out with everything that was mine. I didn't want anything of his, but I wanted to make sure I got out with what was mine. So.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, and I know this is hypothetical, but work with me for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Say that he ended up not getting called out for the person that he is, and things were okay. So there's not a lot of animosity. There's no reason for y'all to split up. Do you think you would have helped pay for his kids' college out of your kids' college money? Because you love these kids.
I have no doubt I would have volunteered to do it. I don't know if he would have asked me to, certainly not directly, because he had a pretty sizable ego and it was hard for him that I made more than him. So, but I think I would have felt compelled to try to help as much as I could.
And maybe taking away from your kids was not the right way for me to put that, because you could have helped him without taking away from your kids.
Yeah. But I think if we had stayed together and got to that point, if I hadn't volunteered to help, it probably would have been a big bone of contention with him.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
And also, did y'all ever talk about if y'all ever split up, that you could still see his kids? Because I see this all the time. A stepmom will say, oh no, if anything ever happens, I'm still their mom and I'm still going to be in their life. And he's told me this.
We never talked about if we split up.
Okay.
I think part of that was just kind of I trying to be super positive. And if you had told me 7 years ago I was going to be divorced the second time, I never would have believed you.
Right.
I thought, the first one I could understand because I was super young when I got married and what happened with my dad and everything. So I really thought I really had convinced myself that, he was a different person than he ultimately ended up being. And it would never even cross my mind to have that conversation with him, quite honestly.
And I know people are thinking, well, how did you not see this side of him? How did he hide it so well? Y'all were together how long?
We were together, so from the time we started dating until we actually split up, we were together almost 7 years.
Yeah. But it just goes to show people can show you what they want to show you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody needs to go read their husband's or boyfriend's phone, but I've toyed with the idea in the past of if it's good or bad for the step parent to speak to the ex.
Yeah.
Because if you would have talked to the bio mom then, and she'd been like, oh yeah, he's a cheater. You'd be like, no, he's not. You're full of crap. He's not like that.
I'm sure that would have been my reaction, but it would have planted a seed.
Right.
And it's real easy for me to look back over the years and there are lots of things now that I wonder if, how many other times was he cheating and he just didn't get caught and I didn't know because it wasn't so close to home, because our relationship, while it was at the time, I would have said it was good. We had ups and downs and he could be really emotionally distant sometimes. And we broke up a few times, in that 7 years, or 5 years before we got married. So if she had said that to me, it would have planted a seed that I feel like maybe would have made one of those breakups stick instead of kind of always getting pulled back in.
Yeah.
But it's easy to look back and say that, now.
Oh, of course. Of course. So you decide, I'm done with you.
Yes.
You cheating, rotten, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde scoundrel.
Yes.
And I guess at some point you say, I'm going to date again.
Yep.
How long was that?
So I had a little bit of an unhealthy dynamic of not having a hard time being alone.
Okay.
And meaning just that I'd like to date a lot. It felt good to have a lot of dates. So, I think I probably went on my first date within a month of the time he and I split up and I had officially moved out.
You go, girl.
And it was right before COVID, too. All of this happened right before COVID. Thank heavens, because if I'd been trapped in a house with him during COVID, Lord knows you'd be talking to me probably in jail.
Becky don't look good in orange.
No, I do not. It is not my color. So, I dated a few people and then COVID happened. And that was probably the best thing in the world that could have happened because, it was in the beginning. So we were all forced literally to be in our house. And I finally learned to be alone, without a partner, which was really good and healthy for me.
Yes. Isn't it empowering to know all you need is yourself?
Yeah. It really is. And I don't know, I would like to think I would have learned that even without COVID, but COVID certainly really helped that because it just cut off social life for, several months and got me out of that habit of, let me just keep dating. Whenever I don't have the kids, I'm not going to be at home. I'm going to date as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then I had a couple relatively healthy, short-lived relationships, I would say. And then I decided, I'm kind of done. I lived like 3 miles from where my ex lived. And so I still saw him. And like every time I would see his truck, it would just like fill me up with anxiety. Or like going out, we lived in a relatively small town. I just was always like looking to run into him or his girlfriend because I didn't want to see either one of them.
You were on guard.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to quit dating for the most part. And when my daughter goes to college, which was only 4 years at that point, I was like, I'm going to move. I'm going to move away. I'm going to go live at the beach. I'm going to go live somewhere else where I'm not going to run into this guy ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, I'm just going to date for fun for a little bit, nothing serious, whatever. And like right at the end of, I guess that was 2021, it was like one last ditch. I'm going to get on the Bumble and just see what's out there. Maybe I'll have a date for New Year's, and then I'm not doing any more online dating. I'm just going to live life and be ready to move away in a few years. And then, of course, randomly, I met, like within the first 2 days, I met my fiance, who I'm engaged to now.
Oh.
And, of course, also in my list of things, I was like, I don't want to date anybody that has younger kids because I'm on the way out. I'm about to be a empty nester. That's a good thing. And, of course, he has kids younger kids. And it just kind of uprooted my whole life plan meeting him. And I didn't know that the relationship was going to last, but very quickly it became apparent that he's probably the person I'm always supposed to have been with. And I was like, my whole plan is just uprooted at this point.
I love it.
Yeah. Life, what's that saying? Like, there's something about like when you make plans or don't make plans because God's going to uproot them or something like that. But,
yeah. Or write your plans in pencil because God might have other plans or something like that. Yeah.
And so when he and I started dating, he had also been married twice. So that was nice. We kind of had that in common. His kids at that time were, I guess, 8 and 12. I think 8 and 11, I think. And quite honestly, I mean, part of it was me and my trauma a little bit from what happened with I guess I would say my ex stepkids now. Like, I didn't really want to meet his kids for a pretty good while.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be close to him because I didn't want to lose kids again. And even to this day, even with us engaged and all living in a house now, there's still a part of me that holds back emotionally a little bit with them because it's like a fear, like, because that's reality. We all know that. Like, you don't have any legal right to your stepkids. And, it's weird afterwards. And I've already given up 2 stepkids. And there's a piece of me that is like still a little bit scared. Not that I think he and I will ever break up, knock on wood. But, there's definitely some stuff I still need to work through with that.
And y'all been together about 3 years.
Yep. We've been together about three years now.
Engaged a year.
Mm-hmm.
And moved in together about 4 months ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, his ex-wife, so my current partner, his ex-wife,
okay,
from my view on the outside, before we started living together, I thought they had a pretty good co-parenting relationship. She's a little bit high conflict, but not nearly not like some of the horror stories that you hear.
Mm-hmm.
But, she's definitely needy and, she texts and calls him a lot, and she's remarried. She's got a husband and all that stuff, but she's just, she's just a little bit high conflict. I don't think I realized how much of an issue she's going to be until we started living together, though. I don't think you ever can, honestly, until it's in your face all the time.
Right. Okay. Your kids at this time are how old?
So mine are 18 and 23.
18 and 23.
Yeah.
So the 23's out, right?
He technically lives here this semester. He's in grad school and he's doing an internship, but he's an adult. I call him the third roommate. He lives down in the basement. So it's not like he's a kid. He's just another adult in the house, but that's not normal. He'll be gone soon, back to school.
And then what about the 18-year-old?
So she's away at college now.
Okay. So she's liable to come back for summers or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's such an age gap between the 11-year-old and the 18-year-old.
Yeah.
That they didn't really live in the same house long or have the quote, quote, sibling issues many siblings have at that age.
Yeah, no. And so his kids now are 11 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
And the hardest thing for my kids, because they're in and out of the house. My daughter comes home, every few weeks for a weekend or whatever. The hardest thing for them is just that his kids behave so differently. They're just different kids than like the kids that have been in my family, whether it's my kids or my sister's kids or my brother's kids or whatever.
His kids are more rambunctious.
I wouldn't even say they're more rambunctious. They just have been parented really differently. So, they're used to like back talking him.
Ah.
And like, that is not how my kids were brought up. Like, we didn't do that. That's not how I grew up. It's not how my kids grew up. So it's hard for my kids. It's hard for me. And it's not, and again, I want to say they are not bad kids. They are not the horror story kids, but even just like a little bit of an attitude tone for me is a trigger because it's not how I parented. That's not how I grew up either. And it's really hard for me to not like insert myself in his parenting situation when I hear one of his kids backtalk, because my inclination is to be like, don't talk to your father that way. But that's not my role. That is not who I'm supposed to be in this relationship. And that is really hard.
And he's a big boy. If he doesn't like it, he can say something about it.
Yeah. And he is very much a gentle parent. Like he is the most patient person I probably have ever been around in my life with his kids, with his ex, with me. Like he is incredibly patient, incredibly kind. But there are just times that I want to be like, dude, come on, remind him you're a parent.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because a lot of times what we love about somebody is what we quote, quote, hate about them. Yeah. Like you love that he's gentle and kind and patient, except for when it comes to times you don't want him to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I have to say, I am really impressed with how you stated that his kids were raised differently, without saying that they are feral, unparented, crazy kids or something, because you recognize it as differently, but you're not judging it.
Well, it's hard. I'll be honest, that's hard. And I will credit Nacho Kids for being really helpful in this situation, because when in those first few weeks, like I probably would have been like, oh my God, these kids are the worst. They're wild. I can't believe they would do these things, and taking a step back from it, and listening to a lot of the podcasts, reading stuff in the Facebook group, like it has just made me have some perspective and really kind of delve into like, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? Like, let's get to the root of it. It's not about them. It's not about him. It's not about the dish that they put in the sink instead of the dishwasher, which drives me insane. But like, let's focus on why that bothers me. Let's get to the inside piece of it. And so that has been incredibly, incredibly helpful to me to have this Nacho community around.
I used to fuss about the kids not putting stuff in the dishwasher until they put dirty dishes in the clean dishwasher.
We had that happen here too. Yeah.
So I'm like, no, I'm good doing the dishes. Because the last thing I want to do is eat off of an unclean plate or be put up in the cabinet.
There's so many little things like, and this is a lot of stuff that I credit reading the Facebook page and listening to the podcast about. Like another example, and this is just differences in how everybody grew up, is like my kids, I could always have lots of snacks around. It was no big deal. They weren't going to like stuff their face with them. They weren't going to eat 8 oatmeal cream pies in one sitting. For my partner's kids, I don't know. They're just different kids. And if I have the Little Debbie snacks sitting out on the counter, they're going to just want to stuff their face with every single one of them until they're all gone. And so like the first couple of weeks, that was driving me crazy. And I'm like, And so I was like, okay, what can I control in this situation? I can get mad and yell, which is not serving us well, already, or I can just hide the snacks. I'll just put them where they can't see them.
Right.
And I'm like, yes, does it annoy me that today's our day that they come over. So this morning I got up and we have a basket on our island where I keep snacks. And I was like, let me put all the snacks up. And on one hand, that annoys me that I have to do that. But then I'm like, but then it solves the problem. I'm not mad. I'm not stressed. And they're not stuffing their face. So
right.
Is it annoying? That's why I think I put on the paper, I hate nachoing, but it works. So I'm going to do it because it's making me better. And it's eventually going to make things better for the kids. We're not quite there yet. But, it's controlling the things I can control. And I know that's something that you all talk about a lot. And what I can control is me and my reactions.
And yes, it might annoy you that you have to go pick that up so they don't eat everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's less of an annoyance than when they do eat everything.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it'll become a habit for you to do that, and you'll take the emotion away out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my partner really, we have really good communication, and he knows about the things that have been bugging me, and he's doing the best that he can to be on top of stuff. Another one and I don't even know why this one bothers me so much, but leaving the chairs out, instead of putting them back under the table or under the island, I don't know why that just gets under my skin so bad. And I want to be petty and be like, I'm going to take them chairs and put them in another room, and nobody will even get to sit at the island if they can't put them under. But I'm also like, you know what? In the grand scheme of things, they're not setting the house on fire. They're not beating each other up. They're not breaking things. I can push it under if their dad forgets to remind them to push it under. So I'm learning to pick and choose my battles, I guess.
Do you hate seeing things out of order?
I would not say that I'm an OCD at all. I'm a pretty clean person. I'm going to put things away. But I think honestly, it was just, when I moved out from my ex's house, it was the year my son went to college. So for 5 years, it was just me and my daughter in our house. And she's, she was used to how I kept house. So everything was clean and orderly and things were put away. And it was it was the best of the best. We controlled the environment. It was all girls all the time, and so I don't know if it's about things being out of order as much as it's just me needing to be more realistic about what to expect about living with other people again, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. It makes sense 100%. But it could also be because you look at it as a very simple task that it should be automatically be done almost.
Yeah.
Push a chair under.
Yeah. I have always taken the approach of I'm going to raise my kids up to be good future roommates for somebody in whatever definition of roommate you use. So it's basic respect, putting your chair under is just basic respect. Putting your dish in the dishwasher, if it's available, is basic respect versus putting it in the sink. Walking past a piece of paper on the floor and picking it up is basic respect. Right. Even for me, making my bed in the morning is basic respect. It's taking care of your belongings. Mm-hmm. And that's something I think too, one of the best rules I think that I read in Nacho Kids right off the bat was you can't care more than the bio parent cares. Yeah. So all those things are super, well, I don't even know if it's fair to say they're super important. I like all of those things. I like my house to be like that. But if, my partner, if making the bed in the morning is not a big deal for him, for his kids, I can't be so eat up about them not making their beds if their own parent is not that way.
Right. And if you have OCD and it drives you crap crazy, with all due respect, that's your OCD.
Yes.
So you resolve that by you making the bed or not opening the door.
Yes. So I have been he's been working with them because he says, he wants them to be a good roommate. He wants them to do all those things. It's just not the way they lived. When they were with him before we lived together, it was 3 boys in a house. It was like a frat house. They were running around, farting and half naked and, living their best boy life and
jumping on the furniture.
Yeah. So it's just a difference. They need some time to learn. I think there are things looking back, he probably could have done to help prepare them for the reality of living with girls, what it was really going to be like one day.
Yeah.
But they also have a mom, and she, in my view, she should have been teaching them all that stuff. But whatever.
Yeah.
Can't control what she does either. So
How often do y'all have them? I don't remember if I
so
asked that.
we have them every other Thursday night. They stay, and then we have them every Thursday night. Sorry, and then every other weekend until Monday. So
Okay.
this is the beginning of our time with them. They come today, and we'll have them until Monday when he takes them back to school. But bio mom doesn't like to run the errands with the kids. So my partner ends up, still running to take them to doctor's appointments and taking one of them to their after school extracurricular activities. And she's kind of lazy with a lot of that stuff, I feel like, and she really leans on him instead of asking her own husband to be part of the solution. But that's a whole nother issue with her.
Yeah. Well, she knows he'll do it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have asked him to work on having some healthier boundaries, because I told him at some point it will be when it starts interfering with my life and our schedule as a couple. That's when I'm like, all right, you got to make me a priority at some point. Her needs, kids' needs always come first. But when it's her being lazy that she doesn't want to drive the kid to the sports or whatever, at some point you got to draw a line and be like, you got to do it. It's your day. Do it. It's your day. Or we live 30 minutes from her now. So, he's just driving back and forth all the time, running errands. And it's really hard to not I don't want to make his life more stressful because he's already caught in the middle of all of us. So I'm biting my tongue a lot right now and trying to just give it some breathing time. So hopefully at some point it won't get under my skin so much.
Yeah, because if you do push him, make her do it. Make her do it.
Yeah.
He can be resentful towards you because you're making him miss time with his kids.
Exactly.
Because even as stressful as it is for him, it's his kids, and part of him loves doing it.
Yeah, that's exactly what he has said to me. And he is getting better, right? So we had a situation last night. She called him up and wanted to know what our plans were for Thanksgiving. And he was like, well, now his family normally, his side of the family always does Thanksgiving sometime the weekend after. That has been their standard forever. So I don't know why she cares, but whatever. Mm-hmm. So he said, well, we're going to do it on Thanksgiving in our new house, with Becky's family, and then his parents are going to come. And she was like, well, what about the boys? Don't you want the boys to be there? And he was like, well, you have family coming in from out of town. So I feel like that's more fair for you to have them on Thanksgiving because you got family coming from out of town. We don't, all of our family lives here. And she just blew it up into this big, long, drawn out, what he said, text argument about how he's terrible because he's not trying to spend extra time with the kids. And he's like, I'm asking for the same time I always have. So she's just got this weird possessiveness about him. And I think it's gotten worse since we got engaged and since we moved in together. It definitely has gotten a lot worse. And so I think she's just working out something on her own about, in her head, she probably still felt like he was her husband to some degree. And now he's putting space between them, and that is causing a lot of conflict for them, which is hard for me not to get involved in because that's his relationship to manage, not mine.
Right. Yeah. And that's hard. Again, to stand back. But the relationship he has with her is their relationship, not yours.
Yes. And she wants me to be involved with her, which is the strangest thing in the world to me. She wants to be able to text me, and she got all up in her feelings about some issues right when we first moved in together and inserted herself in some issues with the kids. And I think she planted some seeds in the kids' heads so that they're not. The first 2 weeks we lived together were great. Mm-hmm. Everything was good. Everybody was happy. There were no big issues. And the only corrections I was doing at the time was the put your chair under the table, please, or put your dish in the dishwasher, please. That was it. There was really nothing more than that. First 2 weeks were great. And then the kids were with her for 24 hours and she started blowing him up about, the kids are terrified to be here and they're scared to death of me. And I'm so mean to them. And all of this stuff, which created he had to go over to her house and talk to her and the kids and her husband.
Oh my gosh.
Ever since then, it has just been super stressful for me. And I'm not super comfortable with the kids now. Like I already had like some emotional guards up, and now it's like
Yeah.
really hard for me to just be myself on any level around the kids, which sucks. I don't like
Yeah.
that.
Did the kids say that they said those things?
Yes, and I'll say I wasn't there for this conversation.
Right.
My partner said, the kids, and then these are his words, the kids know how to manipulate their mom and get sympathy from her. She also knows how to manipulate the kids. So he thinks what happened was, the younger one wasn't ready to go to bed that night. And so he's like, Mom, whatever, Becky was mean to me or whatever. And so he starts fabricating a little bit of a story to get sympathy and extra time to stay up late. And then the mom starts feeding into it. And, she said some things that she claims the kids said, like that I lead him around, like by his nose and whatever I say goes. And I'm like, that's not what those kids would say. They don't even talk like that.
Right.
I think it's a little bit of some kids playing the sympathy game with their mom, and then a lot of their mom manipulating the situation and wanting me to, she's tried to like get me to go do stuff with her one-on-one before we were engaged or anything, which I'm not open to because I'm a big believer in boundaries in relationships. And I think she just doesn't like the fact that, I don't respond to any of her texts, ever, because she needs to talk to him. She doesn't need to talk to me unless it's an emergency. There's no reason to talk to me is kind of how I feel with her.
Right. And the fact that she wants you so involved in everything is a red flag to me.
Yeah.
Just because I know 97.8% of the time when the stepmom and the bio mom become friends, it doesn't last.
Yeah.
You would have been blamed for who knows what.
Mm-hmm. Well, and she's kind of that person. She's done it a few times over the years because we're fine to be together if there's something going on for the kids. Like we're not where she has to sit on one side of the room and I have to sit on the other side. I'm like, I can be perfectly nice in person. I'm just not going to encourage this relationship outside of those settings. But, she wants to like talk trash about my partner to me. And I'm like, don't talk bad about him. That's the person I love more than anyone. And why am I going to be like, yeah, he's a lazy bum? I'm not going to say that ever. And certainly not to her. If I need to vent, it's not going to be to her. So
Right.
she's got some weird boundary violation issues for sure that I'm just not willing to be part of, and that makes her more mad. And hopefully she'll burn herself out of that one day soon.
Well, I'm very impressed with you because number one, you didn't fall for that. You didn't get into it. And you're aware of what's going on.
I guess if I have to give my ex-husband, the terrible one, credit for anything, it's kind of like learning to see that kind of behavior and not get sucked into it. Because I spent so much time sucked into it with him that I'm just like, I just can't, I can't do it now. It's too exhausting. It's hard enough to be on the outside of it and not interfere or not try to like get on my partner about things or tell him you should say this or you should tell her this or I give myself enough tension headaches just biting my tongue that I don't need to be in the drama any more than just a very distant viewer of it.
Yeah. I know after the crazy husband,
Mm-hmm.
I would think you would be scared to death of trusting anybody because it wasn't like he just cheated.
Mm-hmm.
He was a completely different person than you thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
It was
It's
like
hard.
the My Secret Life.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could be on a whole episode, man. I would love to. I said for a long time I was going to write a book about everything that happened because it was like a Lifetime movie. Like I was living in my own Lifetime movie.
You should.
But it was really hard. But I also am just so thankful that I already had a therapist that I had built a previous relationship with, after my dad died, that when my ex and I started having all these problems, like it was the first thing I did was I was like, I need to talk to you. I got to get some therapy. Apparently I'm crazy. I don't know what's going on. I got all these insecurity issues. And the work that we did together in the midst of all that, I mean, that's the only thing that kept me from probably totally writing off all relationships forever and in the future,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So y'all living together is pretty fresh.
Mm-hmm.
things are a little bumpy right now
Yeah.
because I don't know if you noticed this, but when you got engaged, there was probably a reset in the blend.
Mm-hmm.
Now you moved in, another reset.
Yep.
And when you get married, there's going to be another reset.
Yeah, he's gonna have to chase me down to actually get married.
You're like, I'll accept the ring, but dude,
Yeah.
I don't know about the other.
I'm like, we bought a house together. Can't that be enough for a good
Yeah,
long while?
I'm all in, see?
Right? I'm financially tied into this relationship.
Yeah, because you've got a while till those kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really want all of this is really hard for me because, I have always been the parent that all the kids want to be around. Like all my kids, my son and daughter, all of their friends are like, we love your mom. She's so much fun. She's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
All of my nieces and nephews are like, we love Aunt Becky. You're the best. Even when I'm hard on them, like it is always, my stepkids were that way. It has always just been such the easiest thing in the world. I felt like to be in kind of that mom role, even though if you asked me, I would not define myself as a mother right off the bat. Like I would talk about my career and who I am as an individual. And then I'm like, oh, and I am a mom. I don't know that I realized that was so much tied into my identity until this blend, which also was complex. And I realize this now is it was kind of coupled with grief about my baby, my daughter going off to college. And so you're still a mom when your kids are in college, but you're not a mom like you used to be. So I think there was like some buried in grief mixed in with trying to make this blend happen. And then whether it was the bio mom's fault or the kids really were uncomfortable, it was just like, it was really rough few weeks. It was a really rough few weeks as I figured out I needed to completely nacho and just step back completely from these kids in this situation. And that's been hard on my partner too, because he really liked having me as his co-parent in the house.
Right. And here's the thing. If he's okay with that, he can still use you on the sidelines without them knowing it.
Yes. Yes.
You're still his biggest supporter.
Yes.
You're just not physically in their face showing them that, right?
Yeah. And it's hard too. Like I feel a lot of guilt towards him because like when he's trying to I make dinner and stuff like that. That's not an issue, but I'm not making special food for anybody. If they don't want to eat what I make, he makes them food. But
I'm so proud of you, Becky. Go ahead. Go ahead.
My kids were picky. I gave that ghost up with my own kids. I was like, if you don't want to eat what I make, I'm going to teach you how to work a microwave and you can make yourself a sandwich and eat some cereal and I don't care. But I'm not making different meals for people because I hate cooking anyways. So, but I feel guilty because I want to help him when he's trying to corral them and get them to pack their own lunches and they're ping ponging all over the kitchen. And when one of them is, back talking him or being a pain in the butt, I so much want to help him and step in. And it's not the right thing right now. And he supports where I'm at with being completely nacho. And he really has hopes and dreams that it's going to be better one day. And I won't feel on the outside because I do feel very much like an outsider with them right now. But he is incredibly supportive, which I'm thankful for because I know that's not everybody's experience in the nacho community. But it's just I haven't and I have guilt about the fight he had to have with his ex last night about Thanksgiving, even though I didn't do anything. I had nothing to do with any of it, but it's there's drama in his life because I'm in his life, even though I'm not causing it, if that makes sense. And that's really hard for me.
Well, no, there's not drama in his life because of you. There's drama in his life because of the ex and how she's responding to situations.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now, I get the feeling guilty. There's other ways you can help him, though. So just say, for instance, he's trying to get the kids to get their stuff together and to get out of the house, and you can tell he's stressing out. If there's nothing you could do to help him physically, like get his keys and his briefcase or whatever together, then even just going over there and giving him a hug.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you something, David and I hate doing video recordings. I hate being on camera. And that's something I've got to get over. And I've been saying that for about 4 years now. But you put David beside me and I'm okay.
Yeah.
And they've done studies on partners being afraid to skydive, for example, or jump off the little bungee cord thing. But when their partner puts their hand on them, they feel a calmness.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's something you could do. It's just,
Yeah.
and if he looks at you like you're crazy, just say, this is the way I can help.
I think he would totally appreciate that. Honestly, we had a conversation the other night, and I'd had a few glasses of wine, so I was a little more candid with some of my comments than I normally am when we talk about like the parenting situation and stuff. And and I told him, I said it was hard because like we have one of those, like our kitchen and living room are combined, and I was like, it's hard for me to sit on the couch and I can see you over there like struggling with getting the kids focused or whatever, and I just don't like, I don't feel comfortable coming over there and inserting myself. And I was like, and it's even like, I don't want to come over there and just like hug on you. And we're pretty physically affectionate all the time. And I was like, and so I feel like I'm being distant from him because I'm like eat up in the nachoing moment, and I gotta find my way back from that. And today one of his younger son was here during the day today because he was sick allegedly from school, and they were in the kitchen like while I was working. I work from home, and I heard him, and so I like made myself go in there and give him a little hug, and it was good. And I was like, you can do this. You gotta. It's like you talk about, you had to like completely pull back, be complete supreme nacho, and then you just start working your way back in where it feels okay. And I think that's what I'm trying to. I've got a little emotional distance from it. I'm self-aware enough to realize a lot of the things that this is bringing up in me. And now I got to find the way to be involved with the boys where it feels okay for me, but I don't feel like I'm overstepping, and then be more supportive to him and focus on our relationship versus my relationship in their family dynamic.
Right. And even though you're not showing, as long as you're comfortable being around the kids with him,
Mm-hmm.
y'all can all go get ice cream together. I wouldn't say make it a whole day thing, but little by little of y'all doing things together will, number one, help you not feel excluded. You might feel like the third wheel or the fourth wheel there for a few times, but it'll get easier. But these kids will also get to know Becky. And they'll get to know Becky to the point of when their bio mom says, well, Becky, da 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 da, they'll think, no, she doesn't. That's not Becky. Not that they'll necessarily see it overnight or that they'll stand up to their mom, but over time, you being who you are is what they're going to see. Not as much as what bio mom's spewing up their butt.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You're really annoying me right now because that's almost verbatim what he told me the other night. He was like, let's do some fun things. And he's like, you be like the version of like the Disney dad version and
yes,
let me do the heavy stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be, but I gotta let that go. So yes,
why don't you want to be?
I don't know. That's where I think it's me. And I think going into this blend with him of living together, I think deep in my psyche, I thought that here, I'm not done being a mom. Just because my kids are both gone away to college, here's my chance to continue being a mom. And I don't think I know I wasn't aware of feeling that way, but I think that was back there in the back of my head. And then when we hit this speed bump with everything, and then it was kind of like, oh crap, you're not going to get to still be a mom. But that's important because his kids I'm not going to be the mom to his kids. I never will be. And it's letting go also of that kind of ideal situation I had with my former stepkids. I think there was a lot of like, just, I don't think I was looking at it from a real perspective, if that makes sense. And so it's just taken me a little bit to adjust it to things in my head to not, feel like it's the nuclear family idea. I think in my head, I was like, oh, I had a little nuclear family-esque and it's just going to keep being that way. And that's not reality. That's just not reality.
But reality is you can have a huge influence on these kids. And you can have that, what's the word I'm looking for? Adult influence on them in a positive way without parenting.
Yeah. And, one of the things I was listening to, like actually one of the podcasts today, and you were calling it it's adulting. You're
It's
adulting with
adulting.
kids, you're not parenting. And I was like, oh, I like that. I like having like a word in my head to, if I'm questioning what I'm about to say or do, I can be like, oh, am I adulting with them or am I trying to parent them to make
Right.
sure it's real? Like what I'm really trying to do is authentic, I guess.
And with David, for example, when we were going through everything with the kids, once things had calmed down and we started noticing positive things happening consistently, right? Not just, oh, a good thing happened today. Let's Lori jump back in because that wasn't going to work. But David helped build that relationship. He would go by the store and get their favorite candy bar and bring it home and tell me to give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to give him doo doo. But I did because I knew what he was doing. And he was just planting that seed of, hey, Lori did something nice for y'all. Because once I started nachoing, they quickly realized who got their favorite cereal,
Mm-hmm.
who did those things. It wasn't their daddy.
Yeah.
And I remember one time one of them said, Dad, I want such and such for cereal. He said, well, you need to tell Lori. That kid was not going to tell me that for nothing. And he didn't.
Yeah.
And Dave was like, well, I'm not going to get it. She does the grocery shopping. So he didn't force them
Mm-hmm.
to communicate with me, but he's like, you're missing out on stuff because y'all don't want to communicate with her.
Yeah.
And
I think,
no, go ahead.
oh, no, finish your thought.
Well, I was just going to say the adulting versus parenting thing actually came to me with a conversation with my dad because his grandmother did not treat all the grandkids the same and was very open with her favoritism toward him, gave him money out of the 6 grandkids or whatever, told him to go get ice cream, not the rest of them. Like, that's crappy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
told him, I said, that's crappy. He said, I agree too. He said, and I even felt like it was crappy when she did it. He said, I wasn't going to go get an ice cream and them not get one. They'd have beat me up. And I told him, I said, that's adulting. She wasn't adulting. She intentionally hurt those other kids. That's not adulting.
Yeah.
Yes, it's okay to have favorites, but you cannot blatantly hurt other people showing your favoritism.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that's been most helpful is I don't have very many, I don't know if I have any friends that are step parents now that I say that. So, and like my mother and I don't have the closest relationship, and she's never been in the position I'm in either. And so she tries to give me advice, but it's not, you should just love them kids. You should be able to say whatever you want to say and tell them to throw the trash away. And, you shouldn't have to act anything different. So like the advice I get from her or some of my friends is not, it's well meaning, but they're not in the throes of it. And so that's been one thing that I think has been really transformative for me. And I'm so glad that I found the nacho community, is like having people who are experiencing a lot of these things and who are able to give the advice like you're giving right now, because they've been through it and they've lived through it and they're in the midst of it. And that's really invaluable, like having other people like that to talk to, because I don't in any of my social circle.
Right. And it amazes me when I talk to stepmoms that say that. But then I think about when I was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
I had one friend that was a stepmom, but she actually filled more of the motherly role.
Mm-hmm.
But once I told her everything that was going on and things were so bad, her only response was, y'all can't keep up like this. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And, she would try to tell me things that she did, but that didn't work for us because she was a different stepmom in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of makes you feel crappy, like, why are we struggling so much? But it's because we were trying to be nuclear.
Yes.
And like your mom and your friends, they mean the absolute best. But what they don't get is you coming in being Captain Save a Kid and, the drill sergeant mom or the female of the house telling them what to do, pick up your clothes. They're going to hate you, and it's going to impact your marriage
Yes.
or your relationship if you won't marry him.
I will marry him one day. I'm just, part of me right now, honestly, part of me, not to derail that thought, is that like, I don't want to like pursue the actual wedding part until like things are better with the kids. And by better, I mean like consistently better for a good while. So Lord bless, I hope it doesn't take, 7 years to make everybody happy and get along.
No, I'm going to tell you, that takes time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But the thing is, and Becky, I'm being honest with you. I won't lie to you. I'm too blunt sometimes, but things can be great for a year. And then one day, bam.
Yeah.
So my suggestion to you is not wait till things are perfect. Because you didn't say perfect, you said better.
Mm-hmm.
Wait till things are better until you can see a type of excitement in them. Because, and your fiance is not going to like me when I say this, but you just moved in. So you need to create a little bit of a foundation before y'all, quote, quote, reset with the marriage.
Yeah.
And the better place you can be with them, 100%, it'll help your marriage. But I also know that through these 15 years that David and I have went through, there are still things that pop up sometimes that are unexpected. For instance, the one estranged stepchild. Never saw that coming. Never in a million years. So if we were waiting for that to happen, we might have had a 1-year window. We better have jumped in on it because there was struggles after that. But with learning how to nacho and understanding why you're nachoing, those tools will get you through it so much easier. And my thing with you is I don't know you from a hill of beans other than this conversation we've had, but you seem like such a very caring person. And it makes you happy to help others and to feel needed. And you can still be that for those kids. So don't think you can't. It's just going to look different than it was with your bio kids.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And, I think a big piece too of like the last few months as I've been kind of struggling through it, before we lived together, everything felt great with the kids. And I know it's different and you never know what's going to happen until you're actually living together. But like, I wouldn't have foresaw any of this. And then those first 2 weeks we were here and everything felt so good. And for it to change so quickly, literally within less than like 36 hours, it went from me feeling like everything was great to feeling like everything was terrible, whether it was real or the bio mom is making all of this up. It doesn't matter. But like, I think there's been a lot of like grief for me and kind of like struggling through that piece of it. And I'm not always the best at managing my grief. I tend to squash it down inside, and not want to deal with it. And maybe I'm just in a healthier place in my life in general because I'm dealing with it in the midst of it. So I guess that's a pat on the back for myself.
That is a huge pat on the back.
But I think that's a big piece of all of this, why it's been so hard for me and why I say, I hate nachoing, and I don't really hate it because I know it's the right thing to do, but it's like, I hate nachoing because I just want it to be, where it needs to be. And I'm just still in the grieving process, grieving that nuclear family, grieving the Brady Bunch idea, grieving my bio kids being grown up and kind of resetting in my mind who I am. And I think there's probably a lot of layers of grief in this situation right now, the more I talk about it.
When I was, my son, when he was 17, about to turn 18, or maybe it was 16, about to turn 17, I think I was having that empty nest syndrome, even though I knew he wasn't going anywhere right then. But all David's kids had moved out, and Jackson was getting to that age where all David's kids moved out. And I got 2 puppies.
Oh, gosh.
And I will tell y'all, I love them, but that was not a good decision on my part. So at least you have humans.
True.
That more likely than not will not always need you to care for them.
Yeah.
And I want you to think back, and you don't have to do it right now, but I want you to think back. What were things that you and the kids, I was going to say jived on, but enjoyed doing together before all this happened because things were good. All of a sudden, things are bad. Well, things are bad because things have been put in their head. What can you do to put things kind of back where they were good? Now, I do not suggest family game night if they get upset if they lose. If they say they don't want to play, don't force them because they will make everybody's life miserable. But something simple as, I would say go to McDonald's for an ice cream, but their ice cream machine never works. So go to Dairy Queen or whatever, 20 minutes. You're around each other. Have your husband bring up a topic of like, oh, the holidays are coming up. What's your favorite Christmas song? Don't discuss, why are y'all acting different? What'd your mama say? Which I'm not saying you did, but let all of you find a new comfort level because it doesn't sound like that they're rude to you. And so I feel like if y'all were sitting down, just like I said, for ice cream or something, your partner might go, hey, what's your favorite Christmas song? And one of them go, I hate effing Christmas. And you can go, oh, Lord, okay. That's not good. But he knows his kids to know what's going to be a touchy subject.
Yeah.
And you can have those neutral type subjects. And he could actually ask you to go first, or he can say, oh, my favorite Christmas song is Walking in a Winter Wonderland. What's yours, Becky? And you can say, the Grinch song. And they're like, the Grinch song? You're too old to like the Grinch song. Or, you know what I'm saying? Just, yeah. Because you were there. Yeah. And that's what I feel like. And I don't know what Bio Mom said, but obviously something changed in that 36 hours. And I think a lot of it is loyalty binds with the kids. Bio Mom doesn't want them to like you.
Yeah.
Bio Mom doesn't want dad happy for some reason. I'm going to say she cheated on him.
She did.
Boom, yeah. Go, Lori.
Nailed it.
Yep. We see it all the time. It's because it's like they realize that I don't want to say necessarily screwed up, but in a way, it's like if they cheated, they don't want them with anybody else.
Yeah.
And she's going to make sure you're miserable. Hopefully at some point she moves on because she hasn't moved on yet. Yeah. Even though she's married, which is odd.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But I think, and this is just totally my view. I mean, I've not been around her and her husband a lot, and her husband's very nice. But I think she's probably pretty controlling with him, if I had to guess. And he's super hands off with the kids, and probably because that's what she wants him to be like. But I know for a fact, like, we were all connected on social media. And like, she used to post a lot of stuff and like tag her husband and my partner and me about what great co-parents we were, even though like I didn't interact hardly any with them. And then this summer we were on a vacation, my partner and I, and she unfriended us and sent this big long text about how it hurts her heart to see all these great, amazing things that we're doing because we have more finances than she and her husband have. And she's still grieving the life she lost. And I'm like, lady, y'all been divorced for like 6 years. You're remarried. Like, I'm sorry if you married somebody who doesn't make a lot of money.
But not just that, but these are a result of her actions. Yeah.
These are your choices you made. But I mean,
right.
Whatever, she definitely still has a lot of envy, I think, and probably regret from losing my partner as her husband,
Could you imagine being her husband and finding out she feels that way?
That's what I have said so many times. I'm like, I would feel terrible. Some of the things that she says. She told us the day before we moved into our house, she told my partner, yeah, I think I'm going to divorce my husband. And I'm like, why is she telling you that? Number one. Number two, isn't this unique timing? Every time we're on a vacation or something big is getting ready to happen, she sends you some dramatic text like that. Isn't that interesting?
It does sound like he could use some boundaries.
Yes.
Such as your personal marriage does not affect me. I understand it could affect our kids. Let me know if you decide to get divorced. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's working on it. I will give him credit. He is working on it. And I know it's probably a long road for him.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries is not that easy because she's going to be livid. She's already wanting your life that she left. And then you're cutting her out even further. You mean I can't talk to my ex-husband about my issues with my current husband? No, lady, you can't.
Yep.
He's not your friend.
Exactly. I told him that the other day. I said, you need to tell her you're not your husband.
Yep. I'm not your husband. I'm not your friend.
Yeah. Talk to me about the kids. If it ain't about the kids and something going on right now, we don't need to talk.
Yep. And, I know for some people it's hard not to reply to messages because they feel like they're being rude.
Mm-hmm.
And his reply could be simple as, I hate to hear that.
Yeah.
If he's one of those people that feels the need to reply.
Yeah.
Because he may feel the need to reply because he's afraid it'll seem rude. He's just not that kind of person, or he doesn't want to rock the boat with her.
Yeah. Yeah. His primary goal is just to keep things good for the kids, which I appreciate and I understand. And like I said, he is making progress, right? Like he said to me last night, he wanted, he asked if I would help him make a calendar for the next few months because he wanted to put all of the school holidays on there and go ahead and tell her, these are the days that I want the kids, so that there was no need to have conversation about like the thing that happened with Thanksgiving. Like he didn't want to have a conversation with her about it. He just wanted to be like, here it is. We're done. We don't need to talk about it anymore.
Right.
That's a good step in the right direction for him to even be thinking down that route.
Oh, honey, 100%. But I'm going to tell you, you made a comment earlier, and I cannot stress this enough to families that are joining families, becoming a step family, becoming a blended family. These boundaries needed to be put in place before you came in the picture because otherwise they're blamed on you.
Yes.
And that's regardless of whether it's boundaries with biomom, boundaries with his own parents, boundaries with the kids. Anything that's not making this other person happy is going to be your fault, Becky.
Yep.
Bad, Becky, bad.
Yep. Well, and I don't know where, probably because my own mother doesn't have boundaries in her life. So I learned even as a teenager, like what I was willing to talk to her about and what I wasn't willing to talk to her about and things like that. And I'm so thankful so the kids' dad and I, when we split up, I'm so thankful that I was a believer in boundaries and that it really helped us, especially in that first really hard year when he was real angry, to not engage in conversations that weren't specifically about the kids and to be just very focused on taking care of them. And we didn't need to be in each other's life. And we didn't need to, if he on the randomness that he would send me a text where he was angry, I just didn't respond. There was no point to responding. He had his feelings. He could feel his way. I didn't need to justify anything, and it changed everything for us, down the road. It took a lot of me, biting my tongue and maintaining those boundaries. But, even he said by the time we'd been split up for about 8 months, a lot of that stuff was really worked itself out. And, even he said
because you didn't play into it. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. I just took the emotion out of all of it.
Yeah. Or you'd still be fighting with him. Well, Becky, we have been talking, I can't believe it, almost an hour and a half.
Oh, geez.
I've got to have you back because we're not finished.
I will be happy to come back anytime. I'm so thankful. I'm not even a podcast person. I've never really liked listening to podcasts until I found Nacho Kids. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you like the last 2 months, that's all I listen to in the car. All I listen to. It's so helpful.
I'm so glad you listened to them. I struggled listening to them too because my mind wanders too much. But I found that I would listen to them on the way to work.
That's what I do.
Yep. And that helped because you're automatically looking around, or maybe not automatically, but you're looking around without paying attention. Oh, that's not even what I'm trying to say. You know what?
I know what
Auto drive at this point.
Yes. You're not getting distracted by work and cleaning and all the other stuff that happens. So.
Exactly. So I definitely want to have you back. I want to talk more about your husband being supportive because that is awesome. And I want to talk about the high conflict biomom complaining about, what was it? Something about Disney.
Oh my gosh. Yes. In the midst of all of this, her telling him I'm a terrible person, she also is questioning him about, we should all go to Disney together next year. One big happy family. And I'm like, absolutely not.
Her and her husband, you, your fiance, and all the kids?
Yeah. That's what she's trying to convince him to do.
Does her husband have kids?
No, he does not.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, we're going to end here, but we're going to have you back.
Anytime. I'm happy to do it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, folks, we hope you enjoyed our interview with Becky. And yes, she will be back next week to finish sharing her story. All right, that's all for today, y'all. See you next week. And remember, life is good when you nacho.